Another myth about bats, this is the one that my mom said to me when I first told her that I was going to study bats. But Susie, they're going to try and nest in your hair. Bats don't try and nest in your hair. First of all, they're not birds, and so they're not going to nest. They're going to live in roosts. But bats will swoop near people, but they're just looking for an insect to eat. It turns out that when you breathe out carbon dioxide, and mosquitoes use that trail of carbon dioxide to find you. And so the bats are following the mosquitoes, which are following you. It also turns out that women with long hair, when your hair sort of swishes together, it makes ultrasonic noise that sounds a little bit like a big ball of insects. And so the bats are coming to check that out. If a bat does get in someone's hair, it wants to get out nearly as much as you want it out of your hair. So bats live in roosts, not nests. They spend time in both what's called a day roost and a night roost. During the daytime, they're going to find a place that is very well protected and often with fewer numbers of individuals. Night roosts, this is where they're going to go after they feed for a while. Bats need to eat more food in a night than they can fit in their gut. So they're going to go feed for an hour or two, go to a night roost, do some digesting, some socializing, some cleaning, and then they're going to head out, feed again, and then head back to their day roost. Examples of roosts, there's many natural roosts. I think everyone knows that bats use caves, but actually only certain species use caves. Others will use small rock crevices. Lots of bats like to live in snags. Snags are dead standing trees, tree hollows in healthy trees, or even flaking tree bark. There are a lot of man-made structures that bats will use. Typically we call these cave analogs, which means they're acting like a cave or a tree hollow, and so bats will use them. So mines are often used by bats. Barns, bridge expansion joints are very important habitat in California. Next time you drive over a bridge, notice that as your car goes over, it makes sort of a regular ta-tunk, ta-tunk, tunk sound. What's happening each time you go across that is you're going over an expansion joint. When engineers build bridges, they don't build one huge concrete slab because if the earth settles or there's a slight earthquake, the bridge is just going to crack. So instead they build it in pieces that can shift without the whole road falling apart. Those expansion joints, though, are about an inch wide, and if a bat flies up underneath, it's a perfect roost. You guys may be familiar with the causeway between Sacramento and Davis. There are over 50,000 bats living in the expansion joints underneath the causeway. Parking structures, attics, barns, porch overhangs, all of these places can serve as bat roosts. Here's some examples of roosts that I've done work in. This is a barn outside of Woodland. This is actually in an organic walnut orchard, and the farmer was interested in figuring out what bats he had and how he could attract more, because it turns out that if you're not spraying pesticides, bats are one of the best predators of codling moths, which are a key predator of walnuts. This is a roost in a horse barn in Napa. These are just 2x4s in the side of the barn. This was an active barn. There was 2 horses actually in this stall. And up in here we've got a mom. There's a bunch more bats up here. This was a maternity roost of about 200 bats, all fitting up into this little slat area. This is an old abandoned mine down in the Rockland area, and this was one of the more exciting days of my career. We actually documented Townsend's big-eared bat, which is currently proposed as a threatened species in California, and that was the first documentation of this species since 1906, and the last person to document them was Joseph Grinnell, who was a very famous naturalist in California. These are some tropical pictures. I didn't take these pictures myself. When you live in the tropics, you don't have to worry about staying quite so warm. So here we have some bats that are roosting just out on the tree bark. And notice they blend in perfectly. These are tent-making bats. What these guys do is they chew on the ribs of large tropical leaves. The leaf collapses down and creates a nice little dry area for a small group of bats to live. The leaf is going to die after about 14 days, 10 to 14 days, and so they'll just move and make a new roost somewhere else. So, next time you're in Costa Rica, make sure you look up in the rainforest for big, huge leaves that have flopped down, and underneath you might have this cute little pile of tent-making bats. They also have a little suction cup right next to their thumb, so that will help them hold on to that smooth leaf. So what makes a perfect roost? Safe from predators and temperature, temperature, temperature. The main abiotic factor that affects bats and where they occur is going to be temperature. Bats are going to use daily torpor to conserve energy. And this is a little bit like going into hibernation every single day. You slow your heart rate down. You let the environment keep you warm. Bats are often associated with attics. An attic is a place that stays really, really warm. And so they're trying to find a place where the environment will keep their body at a high temperature so that they don't have to use energy to stay at that high temperature. When they go into true hibernation in the winter, they actually seek out caves and roosts that are very, very cold so that they can slow their body way down and not use excess energy through the winter. Bats in hibernating caves have been documented to breathe twice a minute at the most and have barely any heart rate at all. Sometimes bats can get into a place that we don't want them to. They can be humanely excluded from homes or other structures. Sometimes I have students call me who they've got maybe bats in a church or out in a barn, and maybe it's in a place they don't want them anymore. And it is possible to get them out. What you have to do is identify where they are entering. They only need a gap of about a half an inch to an inch, so they can really squeeze into very small spaces. Then what you need to do is allow the bats to exit, but not come back in for several nights. There's a variety of ways to do this, but you can duct tape a piece of PVC pipe around a entry-exit hole. You would have a piece maybe 6 inches long, and then at the end of the pipe you tape a circle of black plastic. Now, the bat is going to be able to fly out of that plastic, but it's going to collapse down on itself, and so the bat's not going to be able to come back in. The only important thing is that you want to avoid doing this during the maternity season, May, June, and July, when there might be babies that are inside the roost that would be abandoned. Then finally you have to close off all the entry points so that the bats don't just come right back. Some people are interested in excluding bats, other people are interested in attracting bats. And here's some examples of bat houses. The picture here is a classic bat house, and this is model 1. Notice for all these that the entry point is in the bottom. So the bats are going to fly in, they're going to land, and then turn upside down and hang upside down in here. There's a lot of research about bat houses and where they should go and what the best forms are. If you look at these models, you can see the bigger the bat house, the more likely it is that it will be occupied. These smaller bat houses tend to be bachelor pads for 1 or 2 males. Larger bat houses attract females and groups of pups. The advantage of a larger bat house is the bats can move around to adjust for temperature. So if it's a cold day, they can move towards the front and stay warm from the sunshine. If it's too hot of a day, they can move towards the back. With a smaller bat house, they don't have nearly as much flexibility. Interestingly, it's better to build your bat house with old wood, maybe the wood that's been laying behind the house or out in a pasture, rather than brand new wood. The bats seem to be more likely to colonize a place that doesn't smell like brand new wood. So this is sort of a neat example of a bat house. This is down at University of Florida. They were redoing their football stadium and they were going to displace a bunch of bats. So they decided to build a bat house that they would hopefully move to. To give you some perspective, this is a pretty large structure. A person standing would go to right about here. And if you were to look underneath, you would just see a whole series of slats underneath here that the bats can fly up into. So they built this in 1990 with high hopes. No one showed up. 1991, 92. At this point, most people thought the project was a failure. In 1993, they had 34 bats using the site. 1994, 300. 95, 8,000. And now there are more than 20,000 bats using just this one structure. Sometimes it takes a little while for the bats to actually find a new roost. The other possibility is that it's in the wrong location in terms of temperature. So if you ever put up a bat house and it's not getting any bats, it needs to be moved. It needs to be in a cooler place or a warmer place or up a little higher so it's a safer place.